Ogilvy on Advertising by David Ogilvy. Picture ancient Athens. One speaker finishes, and the crowd murmurs politely, "What a beautiful speech." Then another takes the stage. When he's done, the entire audience leaps up, grabs their weapons, and roars, "Let's march against Philip!" Same city, same people. Two completely different reactions. This story captivated one of the sharpest minds of the 20th century, a man who figured out that words aren't meant to be admired like paintings in a gallery. Words should make people move, make them act, make them buy. His name was David Ogilvy, and instead of marching against kings, he taught the world to march toward products on shelves. Welcome to the Billionaire's Bookshelf, where we break down the books that made the world's most successful people who they are. Today, we're cracking open more than just a classic. This is the Advertising Bible. Published in 1983, Ogilvy on Advertising has sold millions of copies and become the secret playbook for anyone trying to sell anything soap, cars, politicians, or just a really good idea. So who was this guy? David Ogilvy was nobody's idea of a typical ad executive. University dropout, chef in Paris, door-to-door salesman hawking stoves in the Scottish countryside, intelligence officer in World War II. He didn't even start his own agency until he hit 38, armed with nothing but experience, curiosity that bordered on obsession, and one unshakable belief: advertising isn't magic. It's a craft. It runs on principles, research, and genuine respect for your customer. Today, I'm sharing the timeless secrets from the man they called the father of advertising. You'll learn how to create ads that sell not by screaming, but by seducing. We'll uncover the magic of a killer headline, the secret to building an unforgettable brand, and why Ogilvy insisted the consumer isn't a moron, she's your wife. By the time we're done, you won't just understand advertising, you'll understand persuasion itself. Let's dive in. To get David Ogilvy's genius, you need to understand his core philosophy first, the thing that set him apart from everyone else in the game. Right at the start of his book, he makes it crystal clear: "I do not regard advertising as entertainment or an art form, but as a medium of information." Let that sink in. Not art, not entertainment, information. When he created an ad, he didn't want someone to call it creative. He wanted them to find it so interesting, so compelling, that they'd go out and buy the damn thing. That was the only scoreboard that mattered. Did the cash register ring? This philosophy came straight from his life. Before Madison Avenue, Ogilvy spent years knocking on farmhouse doors in rural Scotland, selling expensive Aga cooking stoves. Face to face with skeptical housewives, he learned what it actually took to get someone to hand over their hard-earned cash. It wasn't charm, it wasn't jokes, it was facts. Understanding their problems and offering a clear, compelling solution. He discovered that persuasion is really just applied human psychology. Which brings us to what Ogilvy considered the first and most crucial step in creating advertising that sells: do your homework. You have zero chance of success, he believed, unless you're willing to do the boring, unglamorous work of becoming an expert. Before writing a single word, he'd completely immerse himself in the product. When he landed the Rolls-Royce account, he didn't brainstorm clever slogans. Instead, he spent 3 solid weeks reading every technical document, every engineering report, every scrap of literature about the car. Buried in some technical journal, he found a single beautiful sentence: "At 60 miles an hour, the loudest noise in this new Rolls-Royce comes from the electric clock." That became his headline. It became one of the most famous automobile ads ever created. Not from a flash of creative inspiration, from research, from homework. He did this for every client. For Mercedes-Benz, he sent his team to Stuttgart to spend weeks interviewing the actual engineers building the cars. That research created a campaign of long, factual, ridiculously persuasive ads that quadrupled Mercedes sales in America. When he took on a margarine account, he initially thought the stuff was made from coal. So he spent 10 days reading everything about it until he could write with genuine authority. His message is simple: you can't sell what you don't understand. The more you know, the more likely you'll uncover that one big idea that makes your product irresistible. But knowing the product is only half the battle. You also need to know the customer. Ogilvy was obsessed with consumer research. He wanted to know how people thought about a product, what words they used talking about it, and most importantly, what promise would actually make them buy. This dedication to research leads directly to his next principle: how to position your product. Ogilvy defined positioning simply: what the product does and who it's for. Sounds easy, right? But getting it right is the difference between crushing it and crashing hard. Take Dove soap. He could have positioned it as a heavy-duty bar for men with dirty hands. Perfectly logical. Instead, he chose to position it as a beauty bar for women with dry skin. That single decision defined the product for generations. It shaped the advertising, the packaging, everything. The promise, which came straight from testing, was simple and powerful. Dove creams your skin while you bathe. They've stuck with it for decades because the positioning was right from day one. Positioning is about claiming your unique spot in the customer's mind. When Saab entered Norway with no real identity, Ogilvy's team positioned it simply as the car for winter. 3 years later, it was voted best car for Norwegian winters. Maybe the most famous positioning example he mentions wasn't even his own. When Doyle Dane Bernbach took on the weird little Volkswagen Beetle, Detroit was churning out huge, flashy boats. Bernbach's team did something radical. They positioned the Beetle as a protest against the vulgarity of American cars. Their ads ran headlines like, "Think Small" and "Lemon." They turned the car's odd looks and tiny size from weaknesses into strengths, making it a cultural icon. Once you've nailed your positioning, you need to build what Ogilvy famously called the brand image. He wrote every advertisement should be thought of as a contribution to the complex symbol which is the brand image. A brand's image or personality comes from many things: its name, package, price, and above all, the style of its advertising. He believed that just like people, products have personalities, and those personalities can make or break them. Why do people choose one whiskey over another? Have they actually done blind taste tests? "Don't make me laugh," Ogilvy would say. The truth is, they're choosing an image. The rugged, authentic vibe of Jack Daniels appeals to a different person than the more traditional feel of Grandad. The brand image is 90% of what you're actually selling. This is why consistency matters so much. Your advertising needs to project the same image, the same personality, year after year. One of his most famous examples was the Schweppes campaign. He took the company's own chairman, a distinguished British guy with a beard named Commander Whitehead, and put him in the ads. For 18 years, Commander Whitehead became the living symbol of Schweppes' sophisticated, worldly, authentically British. The campaign worked incredibly well on a tiny budget because it built a consistent, powerful brand image. Same with the Marlboro Man. Leo Burnett's cowboy campaign gave the brand a rugged, masculine image that appealed to smokers worldwide for decades. It transformed Marlboro from an obscure brand into the world's best-selling cigarette, proving the massive power of a consistent brand image. Now, even with perfect homework, brilliant positioning, and a strong brand image, your advertising will, in Ogilvy's words, pass like a ship in the night, unless it contains one more crucial element: the big idea. It takes a big idea to attract the attention of consumers and get them to buy your product, he wrote. But where do these ideas come from? Not from committees, not from brainstorming sessions. According to Ogilvy, big ideas come from the unconscious. But here's the catch: your unconscious needs to be well informed, or your idea will be irrelevant. This is why homework is so vital. You first stuff your conscious mind with every scrap of information about the product, the consumer, the competition. Then you unhook your rational thought process. Take a long walk, soak in a hot bath, have a glass of wine, and then, if the line to your unconscious is open, a big idea can bubble up. He tells a wonderful story about this. He'd written a commercial for Pepperidge Farm bread. and his partner said it was solid but lacked imagery. That night, Ogilvy dreamed of two white horses pulling an old-fashioned baker's van along a country lane. That dream became the visual centerpiece of Pepperidge Farm commercials for the next 27 years. It was the big idea, and it came from his well-informed unconscious. How do you know if you've got a big idea? Ogilvy provides a simple test with 5 questions. 1. Did it make me gasp when I first saw it? 2. Do I wish I'd thought of it myself? 3. Is it unique? 4. Does it fit the strategy perfectly? 5. And most importantly, could it run for 30 years? That last one is key. A truly big idea has staying power. Think of the man in the Hathaway shirt. The big idea was adding a simple, cheap, black eye patch to the model. It added mystery, what Ogilvy called story appeal. Who is this guy? What happened to him? The eye patch made people curious, made them look, and made the ad unforgettable. That campaign launched in 1951 and was still going strong decades later. Now we get to the craft itself, the nuts and bolts of building an ad that actually sells. Ogilvy dedicated a huge chunk of his book to what he called a renaissance in print advertising because he felt the craft was dying. But his advice is timeless. It all starts with the headline. On average, he writes, 5 times as many people read the headline as read the body copy. It follows that unless your headline sells your product, you've wasted 90% of your money. So what makes a great headline? First, promise the reader a benefit, whiter wash, more miles per gallon, freedom from pimples, don't be clever, be direct. Second, inject news. Headlines with words like new, introducing, amazing, or suddenly get recalled by 22% more people. Third, be specific. Specifics are more credible. An ad for Sears Roebuck didn't say their profit was reasonable. It said, Sears makes a profit of 5%. That specificity is powerful. Fourth, include the brand name. If you don't, 80% of people who only read the headline will never know what you're advertising. And finally, don't be afraid of long headlines. Ogilvy found that longer headlines delivering more information often sold more than short, snappy ones. The one-word headline lemon for Volkswagen was the famous exception that proved the rule. Next comes the illustration. A picture can be worth 1,000 words, but only if it's the right picture. The most powerful illustrations are those with story appeal. They make readers curious. They make them ask, what's going on here? Then they read the copy to find out. The man with the eye patch is the perfect example. He also found that photographs beat drawings. They're more believable and better remembered. When he took over the Come to Britain campaign, he replaced all the drawings with photographs, and readership tripled. He was also a huge fan of before and after photos, which seemed to fascinate readers endlessly. Finally, there's the body copy. Many people will tell you nobody reads body copy. Ogilvy agreed, to a point. While only about 5% of magazine readers will read an ad's body copy, for a magazine like Reader's Digest, that 5% is still 1.5 million people. And those are your most interested prospects. So how do you write copy that gets read? First, don't address a crowd. When people read your copy, they are alone, he says. Pretend you are writing each of them a letter, one human being to another. Second, you can't bore people into buying your product. You can only interest them. Write in short sentences. Use simple words. Tell a story. One of the most successful direct mail ads ever written began. They laughed when I sat down at the piano, but when I started to play. Who wouldn't want to read the rest? Third, be credible. Ogilvy loved testimonials, not from celebrities, but from real customers or experts. An ex-burglar testifying that he could never crack a Chubb safe is infinitely more persuasive than a movie star pretending to like a product. And finally, long copy sells. This was one of his most controversial but firmly held beliefs. Direct response advertisers who can measure sales to the penny know that long copy almost always outsells short copy. Long copy suggests you have something important to say. He wrote ads for Merrill Lynch with over 6,000 words that pulled in 10,000 responses from a single newspaper insertion. Ogilvy also preached that God is in the details when it came to layout and typography. He pushed for clean, simple, editorial-style layouts that look more like magazine articles than ads. He hated reverse-type white text on black backgrounds because decades of research proved it was incredibly hard to read. He insisted on setting headlines in lowercase, not all caps, because it's easier on the eye. These might seem like small things, but he believed they made a huge difference. "You can't save souls in an empty church," he'd say. "Do you think an advertisement can sell if nobody can read it?" Much of this advice came from the era of print, but Ogilvy also had profound insights about the most potent medium of all, television. He relied heavily on research that measured not just how many people recalled a commercial, but how many people changed their brand preference after seeing it. He found that certain types of commercials consistently performed better. What worked? Humor, when done well. For years, conventional wisdom said people don't buy from clowns. But Ogilvy's research showed that genuinely funny commercials could sell. He warns, however, that very few writers can actually write funny. Slice of life. These are the little playlets where one person convinces another of a product's benefits. Copywriters hate them because they can be corny, but they work. Demonstrations. Showing the product in action is one of the most persuasive techniques. One of his favorite examples was a French commercial for superglue. To prove its strength, they glued the announcer's shoes to the ceiling and had him deliver his sales pitch while hanging upside down. It was dramatic, memorable, and it made superglue the brand leader. Emotion. While hard to measure, Ogilvy came to believe that nostalgia, charm, and sentimentality could be enormously effective, especially when there's nothing unique to say about the product itself. What didn't work? Celebrity testimonials. He found them below average in their ability to change brand preference. People remember the celebrity but forget the product. Viewers guess that the celebrity has been bought, he wrote, and they are right. He confessed to his own mistake of paying Eleanor Roosevelt $35,000 for a margarine commercial, something he didn't remember with pride. Cartoons. They work for kids but are less persuasive for adults. Beyond the style of the commercial, he offered a few practical rules. Identify the brand within the first 10 seconds. Show the package. And please, open with the fire. You only have 30 seconds. You must grab the viewer's attention in the first frame, or they're gone. When you advertise fire extinguishers, he famously quipped, open with the fire. Beyond the craft of making ads, Ogilvy's book is packed with wisdom about the business of advertising. He gives candid advice on running an agency, landing clients, and what it takes to be a leader. On leadership, he believed the most important job was creating an atmosphere where talented people could do their best work. Make it fun to work in your agency, he said. When people aren't having any fun, they don't produce good advertising. He was famous for giving Russian nesting dolls to every new office manager. Inside the smallest doll was a message. If each of us hires people who are smaller than we are, we shall become a company of dwarfs. But if each of us hires people who are bigger than we are, Ogilvy and Mather will become a company of giants. He lived by this, always seeking out talent better than his own. On getting clients, his advice was disarmingly simple. The easiest way to get new clients is to do good advertising. For 7 years, his agency never lost a pitch for a new account, simply because their work for existing clients was so powerful. But he was also deeply concerned about what was wrong with advertising. He despised dishonesty, particularly in political advertising, which he called the most deceptive, misleading, unfair, and untruthful of all advertising. He pointed out the absurd hypocrisy of a system where a toothpaste commercial gets scrutinized by lawyers and regulators, but a presidential candidate can say almost anything without challenge. He also hated billboards, calling them a blight on the landscape, and citing studies showing that highways with billboards had 3 times as many accidents. He was proud that he convinced Shell to give up billboards entirely. Ultimately, David Ogilvy saw his profession not as a source of intellectual and moral pollution, as critics claimed, but as a necessary and reasonably efficient way to sell things. He felt no guilt about helping to sell toothpaste that prevented cavities, or creating a campaign that brought tourists and jobs to a poverty-stricken island like Puerto Rico. He believed advertising was only evil when it advertised evil things. For everything else, it was a craft, a difficult, demanding, and honorable craft. His life's work was to master its principles and teach them to anyone willing to do the homework. He never saw himself as a creative genius, but as a student of the consumer, a servant of the product, and a salesman, first and last. His goal was never to hear people say how well he speaks, but to have them rise and say, "Let us march." Reading Ogilvy on advertising today, decades after it first hit shelves, is a remarkable experience. We live in a world David Ogilvy could barely have imagined, a world of social media, viral videos, programmatic ads, and artificial intelligence. Yet the striking thing isn't how outdated his advice feels, it's how profoundly, almost shockingly relevant it remains. The tools have changed, but human nature hasn't. That was Ogilvy's great insight. People are still driven by the same fundamental desires, the desire for value, for beauty, for status, for relief from pain. The principles he laid out weren't tricks for a specific medium. They were laws of human psychology applied to the art of persuasion. Think about his core commandment: do your homework. In an age where anyone can launch a digital ad campaign in minutes, this advice matters more than ever. It's a reminder that speed is no substitute for substance. The most successful modern brands, the ones that build real loyalty, are the ones that have done the deep work of understanding their product and their customer with almost obsessive detail. They haven't just targeted a demographic, they've understood a mindset. And what about his focus on brand image? Today we call it branding, but the idea is identical. In a marketplace more crowded and noisy than ever, a product's personality isn't just nice to have, it's a lifeline. The brands we love, the ones we'll pay a premium for, are the ones with a clear, consistent, and authentic image. They stand for something. That was Ogilvy's lesson in 1983, and it's the defining truth of marketing in the 21st century. But perhaps the most powerful and humbling lesson in this book is Ogilvy's relentless respect for the consumer. He famously said, "The consumer is not a moron, she is your wife." It was his way of saying never talk down to your audience. Never assume they're stupid. Never try to deceive them. Instead, treat them with intelligence and honesty. Give them the information they need to make a good decision. It's a simple rule, but it's the foundation of all ethical and effective communication. So how can you apply this wisdom in your own life right now? Let me suggest 3 simple things. First, the next time you see an advertisement that truly grabs your attention, whether on Instagram, a billboard, or TV, stop and ask yourself why. Use Ogilvy's lens. Does it have a big idea? Does the headline promise a clear benefit? Does the image have story appeal? Start deconstructing the persuasion around you. You'll be amazed at what you see. Second, practice the art of positioning in your own communication. Whether you're applying for a job, proposing an idea, or even just trying to win an argument, think, what does this do, and who is it for? Frame your message with a clear benefit for the other person. Remember, it's not about what you want to say, it's about what they need to hear. Finally, embrace the spirit of doing your homework. Before your next important meeting, presentation, or even a difficult conversation, take the extra time to become an expert. Learn everything you can. The confidence that comes from deep knowledge is the most persuasive tool you'll ever possess. That was a summary of Ogilvy on Advertising by David Ogilvy. We've explored the highlights today, but I'll be honest with you. No summary can truly capture the wit, the charm, and the sheer intellectual force of the man himself. The real magic happens when you hold the book in your hands and let his words work on you. A summary is like looking at a map, but reading the book is like taking the journey. This summary is here to help you decide if that journey is one you want to take. If anything we've talked about today has sparked your curiosity or made you think differently about the world of persuasion, then I can't recommend it enough. Grab a copy, because it's a book that doesn't just teach you about advertising, it teaches you about people. The link to the book is in the description. Also, if you found this summary valuable, and you want to keep exploring the ideas that shape our world, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. It helps us reach more curious minds like yours, and ensures you won't miss our next deep dive into another life-changing book. Let's keep learning and growing together.